A 2024 report from the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies found that nearly 3 out of 5 retirees left the workforce sooner than they expected. About 5 years separates what Americans plan and what actually happens. Non-retirees target 66. Most retire at 61. Americans in their 50s have a median retirement savings balance of $460,363. The magic number Americans think they need to retire comfortably in 2026 is $1.46 million. 24 million Americans are seeing a sharp spike in their healthcare costs. The most at-risk group is middle-income Americans aged 50 to 64, still years away from Medicare, facing a doubling or tripling of medical care costs. Delaying Social Security benefits beyond full retirement age increases monthly payments by roughly 8% per year until 70, based on 2026 delayed retirement credit rules. Those are the numbers. Now here's the script. The average 52-year-old in America right now believes they have 13 years until retirement. That number is wrong for the majority of them. Statistically, provably wrong, and the gap between the retirement they're planning for and the one they'll actually get is going to be determined in the next 36 months, not the next 13 years. The next 3. Here's a specific problem. Nearly 3 out of 5 retirees leave the workforce earlier than they planned. Not 3 out of 5 people who wanted early retirement, 3 out of 5 people who had a plan, were working the plan, and still got pushed out. A 2018 Urban Institute analysis of full-time workers in their early 50s found that 2 out of every 3 eventually left their jobs involuntarily. Layoffs, business closings, health events. Restructuring. The probability that you, at 52, will be in complete control of your retirement exit date is, and I want you to actually hear this, less than 50%. And there are 4 things happening to your money right now that your financial advisor either doesn't know about or doesn't have a direct incentive to explain. We're going to go through all 4. But I want to start with the one that blindsides the most people, because it has nothing to do with your portfolio and everything to do with a government deadline that quietly expired on December 31st, 2025. I call the years between 52 and 58 the compression zone, and everything I'm going to show you today lives inside it. Here's the actual thesis of this video. I'm not going to tell you to max your 401k and think positive thoughts. I'm going to show you 4 specific moves that are uniquely available to you at 52 moves that either disappear or get dramatically more expensive by the time you're 57. Some of these are new rules, literally effective in 2026. And the standard retirement advice, max the 401k, stay in a target date fund, trust the 4% rule, was designed for a world that no longer exists for the majority of American workers. I'm going to show you exactly how and why it's failing people in the compression zone and what actually works instead. The reason I call it the compression zone is simple. Everything compresses in this window. Your remaining contribution years compress. Your tax planning windows compress. Your Social Security options compress. Your healthcare gap exposure compresses. And your mistakes compound just as fast as your good decisions. A bad decision at 52 has 13 years to do damage. A good one has the same runway to compound into something genuinely substantial. The compression zone is not a threat. It is a mechanic. And every move I'm going to describe is an attempt to use that mechanic before it closes on you. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you a number that almost no retirement calculator includes a fixed bill that arrives every month, regardless of what the stock market does, and that will destroy an otherwise solid retirement plan for anyone who exits the workforce before 65 without accounting for it. Keep that in the back of your head. But first, let's talk about the specific thing that surprised me most when I ran the numbers on this, because it is not a stock market problem. It is a policy problem that became an emergency in January 2026, and most people haven't processed it yet. There's a woman I will call Sandra. She spent 30 years in marketing at a mid-sized company. She had a plan: work until 62, retire on her savings and her husband's continued income, use the Affordable Care Act marketplace for healthcare until Medicare at 65. She ran the numbers in 2024. They worked. She felt good. Then 2025 ended. Here's what happened. The Enhanced Affordable Care Act premium tax credits that had been subsidizing health insurance for 24 million Americans since 2021 expired at the end of 2025. Congress did not renew them for 2026. The House passed an extension in January 2026, but as of this video, the Senate hasn't moved on it. So right now, those enhanced subsidies are gone. What that means in practice is this. A 62-year-old looking at a benchmark silver plan on the ACA marketplace is now paying roughly $1,072 a month per person before deductibles, before copays, before the out-of-pocket maximum, which in 2026 is $10,600 per individual. If you are a couple, one age 62 and one age 63, you are looking at approximately $2,849 per month in premiums alone. That is $34,188 per year before you see a single doctor. Sandra did not plan for that. Her retirement calculator did not plan for that. And here is the part that makes this worse. This is not market risk. It is not sequence of returns risk. This is a fixed bill that shows up every month regardless of what the S&P 500 does. It does not care about your portfolio. It does not pause during bear markets. It is just there every month, burning through the savings that your calculator assumed you wouldn't need yet. A 64-year-old nearing Medicare eligibility could see their annual healthcare costs more than triple from around $5,300 to over $16,500 because the enhanced subsidy structure is gone. That is more than $11,000 more per year. Same person, same health, different policy year. Now you're thinking, surely there are still some subsidies available. There are base subsidies, but the richer subsidy structure that made ACA coverage genuinely affordable for middle-income retirees, people earning between $50,000 and $90,000 in retirement, that is gone under current law. And ACA pricing is age-rated. Federal rules allow insurers to charge someone in their early 60s up to 3 times what they charge a 21-year-old. So the closer you get to 65 without Medicare, the more expensive private coverage becomes. You think the problem is not having enough saved, but actually the problem for a huge number of people in the compression zone is having a retirement plan that assumes employer healthcare coverage through 65 and then a clean Medicare transition, an assumption that is built on rules that no longer apply. So what do you do about this at 52? 3 things specifically. First, and this is the most important tax advantage move available to you right now, if you have access to a health savings account. You are sitting on one of the most powerful tools in the tax code, and most people use it wrong. In 2026, the HSA contribution limit is $4,400 for self-only coverage and $8,750 for family coverage. Money goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, comes out tax-free for qualified medical expenses. And after 65, you can use it for anything, paying only ordinary income tax, which makes it functionally equivalent to a traditional IRA with an extra tax benefit layer on the way in. If you're in the compression zone and you're not maxing your HSA, you are leaving one of the only triple tax advantage accounts in existence completely untouched during the years when you arguably need it most. Second, the healthcare gap between now and 65 is not a retirement planning problem. It is a 13-year financial modeling problem that has to start today. You cannot wait until 61 to figure out what healthcare costs. By then, your options are fixed and your savings are already deployed. What you can do at 52 is model the actual cost, not the subsidized cost, from a calculator built in 2022 and reverse engineer how much additional portfolio you need to cover it. Third, if your employer currently covers your healthcare, that benefit has a real market value in 2026 of somewhere between $12,000 and $17,000 per year, depending on your age and family situation. Every year you remain employed past 52 is a year you are not burning retirement savings to cover a bill that most retirement plans forgot to include. That is the compression zone working against you if you exit early, and for you if you stay in even 1 or 2 years longer than you otherwise planned. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content, otherwise YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again. This is where it gets really interesting, and I want you to stay with me because this next section is the one that changed how I think about everything else. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you the specific contribution structure that most people at 52 are either ignoring or using in the wrong order. And the opportunity cost of getting it wrong is tens of thousands of dollars over the next decade, conservatively. But first, let me give you the statistic I couldn't stop thinking about for weeks after I read it. 2 out of every 3 full-time workers in their early 50s eventually leave their jobs involuntarily. That is from a 2018 Urban Institute analysis. And the more recent Transamerica data confirms the direction hasn't changed. Health events, layoffs, business closings, family caregiving. The causes vary. The probability doesn't. Less than 50% chance you control your exit date. Sit with that for a second. Because here's why that number changes everything about how you invest at 52. You are not planning for one retirement. You need to be planning simultaneously for 2. The retirement you intend, let's call it the on-plan scenario, and the one that might get handed to you, which I'll call the 5 years early scenario. And the correct financial moves at 52 are the ones that are net positive in both timelines, not just the ones that optimize for the scenario where everything goes according to plan. I call this dual timeline planning. It's not complicated. You run 2 projections in parallel, one where you work until 65, one where something happens at 58 or 59, and you make only the decisions that benefit both. The moves that only help you if everything goes perfectly are the ones you deprioritize. What does dual timeline planning actually mean at the level of specific decisions? It means liquidity matters more at 52 than most advisors acknowledge. A maxed out 401k is excellent. A 401k that you cannot touch without a 10% penalty until 59 and a half is also a trap if your employer eliminates your position at 57. It means building a taxable brokerage account alongside your retirement accounts, accessible, flexible, no age gate. It means not having your entire net worth buried in home equity that requires selling or borrowing to access. It also means the Roth conversion window you have right now at 52, while you're still earning a predictable income and presumably in a known tax bracket, is more valuable than most people realize. After you retire, income becomes unpredictable. Some years you pull from taxable accounts, some years you don't. The ability to do clean, efficient Roth conversions, moving money from traditional accounts into Roth accounts at a controlled tax rate, diminishes when income is variable. The compression zone is one of the best times to do this systematically in whatever amounts keep you within your current bracket. There is a thread I want to introduce here and return to later. Keep a man named Robert in the back of your mind. Robert is 53, senior engineer at a manufacturing company, solid income, around $120,000 a year. He's done most things right. He has been maxing his 401k since his 40s. He has a plan, work until 67, claim Social Security at 67. His wife claims spousal benefits on his record. It is a reasonable plan. It is a clean plan. And it is a plan built entirely around one scenario, the scenario where Robert stays in full control of his timeline. We'll come back to Robert. Now let me talk about the advice that has been failing people in the compression zone for the last decade. And the specific reason it fails, because understanding the failure is the only way to understand what actually works. The standard retirement advice you will receive from most fee-based advisors, most bank specialists, and most of the internet is max your 401k, invest in a target date fund, and trust the 4% rule to fund your retirement. Those are not bad ideas. They are incomplete ideas, and they're incomplete in exactly the ways that matter most for someone who is 52 in 2026. The 4% rule was developed in the 90s by financial planner William Bengen using historical market data. It says you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio annually without running out of money over a 30-year retirement. It is a useful starting point. Here is what it does not account for. It does not account for a healthcare gap of $12,000 to $17,000 per year before age 65. It does not account for a forced exit that front loads your withdrawal years by 5. And critically, it does not account for sequence of returns risk. Sequence of returns risk is the single most underexplained threat in retirement planning. Here is the clearest way I can put it. Two identical portfolios, both start at $1 million, both experience the same average annual return over 30 years. But one experiences a 20% market decline in years 1 and 2 of retirement. The other experiences that same decline in years 28 and 29. After 30 years with the same average returns, the early decline portfolio ends at $880,000. The late decline portfolio ends at $1,358,000. Same average return, $478,000 difference. Because of timing alone, because when you are withdrawing from a portfolio that is simultaneously losing value, you are selling assets at depressed prices that can never participate in the recovery. A 20% decline on a $1 million portfolio costs $200,000 in absolute value. The same 20% decline on a $300,000 portfolio later in retirement, when withdrawals have reduced, it costs $60,000. The early years of retirement are when the portfolio is at its largest, which is exactly when a bad sequence of returns does the most permanent damage. That is not in your 4% rule calculation. The mainstream max your 401k and wait until 65 advice was built for a world where most people worked until 65, had employer health care until 65, claimed Social Security at 65, and then withdrew a fixed percentage for the next 20 years. That world does not exist anymore for the majority of American workers. The advice hasn't caught up, and the people running standard retirement calculators don't have a financial incentive to tell you where the model breaks. Here's the part that never makes it into a standard retirement calculator. Knowing these numbers and building a system around them are two very different things. I spent months going through 50 years of actual retirement data, not blog posts, not retirement brochures, and I built what I found into something I call the exit code. It is a digital book, 8 chapters, built around a mathematical framework for determining when you can actually leave, accounting for the healthcare gap, the sequence of returns problem, the forced exit probability, and the Social Security timing decision that most people get wrong. A couple of things in the exit code are specifically relevant to what we're discussing. One is the 4% trap and the dynamic withdrawal method that replaces it a framework that flexes with market conditions instead of drawing a fixed check from a portfolio that might be declining at the same time. The other is the 58% rule, the buffer strategy built around the statistical probability that you will exit the workforce before you plan to, and what that means for how much you actually need before your retirement feels genuinely secure, not just on paper secure. The book is built on 50 years of data, not opinion. You can get it for less than dinner through the link in the description. If you're in the compression zone, this is the framework I would want in my hands right now. Back to the moves. Let's talk about the contribution structure, because this is where the actual mechanics of being 52 and not 45 and not 60 become a specific financial advantage that most people are not using. In 2026, the rules on catch-up contributions changed, not slightly. The Secure 2.0 Act, which went into effect this year, introduced new limits that are genuinely significant. Here is the structure. The standard 401k employee contribution limit in 2026 is $24,500. If you are 50 or older, you get an additional $8,000 in catch-up contributions for a total of $32,500. That is the number most people have heard of. Here is the number most people haven't heard of. If you are between 60 and 63 years old, the Secure 2.0 Super Catch-Up raises that additional contribution from $8,000 to $11,250. Total annual contribution in those 4 years, $35,750 per year in a single 401k. At 52, you're not in the super catch-up window yet. You're in the standard catch-up window. But the existence of the super catch-up changes how you think about your contribution strategy for the next 8 years. Because It means that if you can accelerate contributions now and keep accelerating through 60, 61, 62, 63, you have a specific runway of elevated tax advantage savings that no other age group gets. Let me do the math on what people in the compression zone are actually leaving behind. If you're 52 and earning a solid income, but you're currently contributing $20,000 per year to your 401k, not maxing it, you are leaving $4,500 in tax advantage space on the table every year, over 13 years to 65. With a 7% average annual return, that $4,500 annual gap compounds to approximately $98,000 in lost portfolio value. Not theoretical, real. It's compounding that you paid zero taxes on while it was growing, and that you're not capturing because of an administrative decision that takes about 10 minutes to fix. Now, add the IRA. The IRA contribution limit in 2026 for people 50 and older is $7,500 standard, plus $1,100 in catch-up contributions, totaling $8,600. That is a separate account with its own ceiling. Stack it on top of the 401k. If you're not maxing both, you are missing the double runway. There is one new complication in 2026 worth understanding if you're a higher earner. If you earned more than $150,000 in wages in 2025, your 401k catch-up contributions in 2026 must go into a Roth 401k account, not a traditional pre-tax account. This is a secure 2.0 provision that just took full effect. Some people hear this and panic. I think it's actually fine for most people in the compression zone. Here's why. At 52 with a high income, your tax rate in retirement is genuinely uncertain. You might have a lower effective rate in retirement, which argues for pre-tax contributions now. Or you might have significant traditional IRA balances generating substantial required minimum distributions, which would push you into a higher bracket in retirement than you expected. Roth catch-up contributions hedge against the second scenario. You pay tax on a rate you know right now, and that money compounds and comes out tax-free forever. For someone in the compression zone where the retirement tax picture is unclear, that certainty has real, quantifiable value. The practical question is, what is the correct order to fill these accounts? Because most people get this wrong, and the wrong order costs them meaningful after-tax returns. Here is the right sequence. First, contribute to your 401k up to the full employer match, whatever that is. You take every dollar of it. That is an immediate 100% return, and no other move in personal finance touches it. Second, max your HSA if you have an HSA eligible health plan. HSAs have the best tax treatment of any account in the code triple advantaged if used for healthcare, double advantaged for anything else after 65. Third, max your IRA, including the catch-up. IRA contributions give you flexibility and investment options your 401k may not offer. Fourth, go back and fill the 401k to the $32,500 ceiling. Most people do steps 2 through 4 in the wrong order, or skip the HSA entirely and lose the best tax advantages in the process. Now, let's close out the 4 moves with the one that will determine, more than any other single decision, the lifetime income of almost everyone in the compression zone. Stay with me here, because this next part changes everything, and it resolves the Robert story I started earlier. Most people think of Social Security as a retirement decision. You retire, you figure out when to claim. That framing is wrong. It costs people money, a lot of money. Social Security is an insurance decision. Specifically, it is longevity insurance protection against outliving your portfolio. Here is how the mechanics work. For every year you delay claiming Social Security past your full retirement age, which for anyone born in 1960 or later is 67, your monthly benefit grows by 8%. You stop accumulating those credits at 70. So claiming at 70 instead of 67 gives you 24% more per month for life, indexed to inflation annually. In 2026, the Social Security Administration publishes maximum monthly benefits for maximum earning workers as follows. $2,969 per month. If you claim at 62, $4,207 per month at 67, and $5,181 per month at 70. The difference between claiming at 67 and waiting until 70 is $974 per month, $11,688 per year for life, with a 2.8% cost of living adjustment applied to that higher base every year thereafter. The break-even age, where the higher monthly payments from waiting actually surpass the cumulative benefits you would have received by claiming earlier, falls in the early to mid-80s for the 67 versus 70 comparison. A 65-year-old man today has an average life expectancy that puts him in his mid-80s. Half of 65-year-olds will live past that. This bet is actuarially sound for a large majority of people who are in reasonable health at 52. But here is the trap. Here is the thing that sounds obvious once you hear it and still ruins people's plans. Delaying Social Security to 70 requires you to fund the gap. If you stop working at 62, 63, 64 for any reason, including the reason that was handed to you, and you want to claim Social Security at 70, you need 8 years of living expenses to come from somewhere else. That somewhere else is either your portfolio, part-time income, or some combination. That is the bridge. And the bridge has to be built before you need it, not after. You think the problem is claiming Social Security early, but actually, the problem is not having built the financial infrastructure that allows you to wait. Here is a story about that. There's a town built near a river that floods badly once every decade. The people who move to town thinking they will figure out how to cross, if the flood comes, they end up in a panic, crossing in dangerous conditions, losing half their cargo to the current. The people who spent 7 quiet years building a solid bridge before the flood, they walk across in the rain while everyone else is scrambling. The bridge costs something. It requires planning, concrete, time. But it changes the entire calculus of what happens when the water rises. The Social Security bridge strategy, funding the gap between your actual exit from work and age 70 through a combination of systematic portfolio withdrawals, part-time income, or income annuities, is the highest guaranteed return financial decision available to most people in the compression zone. Because the return on waiting is 8% per year, guaranteed, inflation adjusted for life with no market risk. That beats most asset classes available to retail investors at zero volatility. And the bridge you need to get there has to be built during the compression zone, not after. Now let me resolve Robert's story. Because Robert's story is the clearest illustration of what happens when none of this is in the plan. Robert reached 56. His manufacturing company announced a restructuring. His division was eliminated. He searched for equivalent work for 14 months. Nothing materialized at his salary level. He exited at 57. His plan assumed 67. His bridge did not exist. His portfolio was almost entirely in a traditional 401k tax deferred, but locked until 59 and a half. And he couldn't access it cleanly without triggering a penalty and a large tax event. His taxable brokerage account had about $70,000 in it, not enough to fund 3 years of living expenses plus healthcare, not even close. So he claimed Social Security at 62, a permanent 30% reduction below what he would have received at full retirement age. His wife claimed spousal benefits at 62 as well. Robert's combined household Social Security income is permanently, irrevocably lower for the rest of their lives than it would have been if he had built the bridge. Every year, every COLA adjustment applied to a lower base. Every year he lives past 80 adds to the total cost of that decision. Robert's story is not a failure of investment returns. His 401k actually performed well. It is a failure of scenario planning. He built for one outcome in a life that delivered a different one. The compression zone is where the bridge gets built. Before the flood, let me make this concrete with one more scenario. The average case, not the exceptional one. Call him Marcus. He's 52. His household income is $95,000 per year. He has $320,000 in a 401k, no IRA, about $80,000 in a taxable brokerage account. He owns a home with substantial equity. He is planning to retire at 65. Run the dual timeline on Marcus. Timeline 1, Marcus works until 65. He starts maxing his 401k with catch-up contributions immediately, $32,500 per year. At a 7% average annual return, his $320,000 grows on its own to approximately $800,000 from compounding. Add 13 years of maximum contributions at 7%, and Marcus exits at 65, with somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,800,000 in the 401k alone. He claims Social Security at 67, roughly $2,400 per month. His healthcare is covered by Medicare. His drawdown rate at 4% funds approximately $72,000 per year from his portfolio. Add Social Security, and he is covering his expenses. Timeline 2. Marcus is laid off at 58, same investment performance. But 6 fewer years of contributions, he misses approximately $195,000 in contributions plus their compounding. He exits with approximately $1,200,000 instead of $1,008,000. His healthcare gap is now 7 years at $12,000 per year minimum in premiums alone. That is $84,000 drawn from his brokerage account, which was already thin. He claims Social Security at 62 reduced permanently by roughly 30% compared to claiming at full retirement age because his bridge doesn't exist. His annual drawdown rate immediately exceeds the 4% threshold that his plan was built around. Same person, same financial decisions. Before 52, one plan, one wildly different outcome in the timeline that had a 40 to 60% probability of happening. What Marcus does differently when he plans for both timelines at 52, he builds his taxable brokerage account aggressively over the next 6 years, specifically to create the flexibility he would need for an early exit. He starts systematic Roth conversions in years where his tax rate allows it. He models the healthcare gap and keeps his HSA fully funded. He identifies explicitly the exact portfolio floor below which he would claim Social Security early and then treats getting above that floor as his #1 financial priority. He doesn't hope for the forced exit not to happen. He plans so that if it does happen, it is manageable. That is the compression zone, used correctly. There's one more thing I want to say before the 3 takeaways. Because every time I explain the Secure 2.0 super catch-up to someone, they ask why their financial advisor didn't tell them. And I always want to say, the super catch-up was passed in 2022, finalized in regulations in 2025, and started in 2026. Your advisor has been very busy keeping you in the same target date fund they have recommended since 2008. Amused disappointment, not outrage. The system works the way the system works, and the 4% rule is the financial equivalent of a GPS that gives you directions based on where roads were in 1994. Technically, a road, not necessarily the one that gets you where you are going in 2026. Here are the 3 specific moves, not generic advice, calibrated to exactly this situation. 1, model the healthcare gap, honestly, this year. Not what healthcare costs while you're employed. What it costs at your age in 2026 without the enhanced ACA subsidies if you exit before 65. For a single person at 62, that baseline is over $12,000 per year in premiums before any out-of-pocket costs. For a couple, it is closer to $34,000. Run that number into your required nest egg. It is not a small rounding error. It is a category of spending your plan may not currently include. 2, fill the accounts in the right order. 401k to the full employer match first. That is always 100% immediate return. Then max the HSA if you are eligible. Then max the IRA, including the $1,100 catch-up available over 50. Then return to the 401k and fill it to the $32,500 ceiling. Most people in the compression zone are leaving meaningful tax advantage runway untouched because they do steps 3 and 4 before step 2, or skip step 2 entirely. 3, calculate the Social Security bridge today, not at 60. The bridge is not the same number as your retirement nest egg. It is a separate calculation. How much do you need in liquid, accessible, non-retirement savings to fund your living expenses from your probable exit date to age 70 without Social Security income? For most people in the compression zone, this number is somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000. Very few people have modeled it explicitly. And the difference between having that bridge and not having it is tens of thousands of dollars per year for the rest of your life. The compression zone is not where retirement happens. It is where retirement is determined. The decisions you make in the next 5 years will produce an outcome that the following 10 years can barely move. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And doing nothing while the window closes built the most expensive retirement imaginable.